Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar by Ciphr and Marshall, Supporting Neurodiverse Employees' Inclusion, Wellness and Productivity. I'm Catherine, I'm Head of Content here at Ciphr. With me on screen is Anne Alcock, Head of Diversity at Marshall E-Learning. And joining us, unfortunately on audio only due to some technical hitches, is our guest presenter today, Lauren Duffy. And welcome Lauren, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you, Catherine, and thank you to yourself and the Ciphr team for organising this. It's a privilege to be involved.
Thanks, Lauren. You well, Anne, today?
Yeah, it's lovely to be with everybody. Yeah, very pleased to be with you.
Fantastic. Let's just give you an overview of the agenda as we wait for people to trickle in. We're going to hear from Lauren about her story and experience of being neurodiverse. She'll also tell us what it means to be neurodiverse and neurodiversity. We'll discuss the moral and legal case for supporting neurodiverse workers, including 6 ways to support a neurodiverse employee. We'll also look at the flip side of that and the implications of poorly managed symptoms. Anne will give us an overview of Marshall's Neurodiversity at Work course, and there'll be time for Lauren and Anne to take your questions at the end in a Q&A. So if you have questions, send them in using the control panel on your screen and we'll get to them at the end of the broadcast. If you're watching live, this is being recorded and the recording will be emailed to you automatically. There's no further action you need to take to receive that. Before we get started, a little bit about Ciphr. We're a leading provider of integrated HR, learning, recruitment and payroll solutions. We're trusted by more than 600 organisations across the UK. We won't be diving into those solutions today, so if you want to learn more about them, please visit our website at ciphr.com or email us at info@ciphr.com. Marshall's e-learning became part of Ciphr Group earlier this year, and they've been innovators in people development for more than 20 years, and with particular strength in diversity and inclusion. All of their courses are regularly updated to ensure they're relevant and accurate based on current legislation, and they combine in-house specialist knowledge, such as Anne, with associates who work closely with them, such as Lauren. Altogether, they've trained more than 2 million people globally. So with that, I'm just going to hand over to Lauren and hand over control of the slides. Bear with us while we make this switch.
Hi everyone, can we all see my slides?
Yeah, that's great, Lauren, thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Catherine, and welcome everybody to Neurodiversity Awareness in the Workplace. Thank you so much for giving your time up today. It's going to be a really invaluable presentation, so hopefully you'll all benefit a lot from it. So I'll start by introducing who I am. So as Catherine said, my name is Lauren Duffy. I'm a presenter, producer, and I'm also a proud ambassador for the British Dyslexia Association. So my job is, over the past 6 years, I've presented on camera, on podcast, digitally, TV, radio, working with some of the biggest broadcasters in the country. I'm incredibly proud of what I've achieved in my career, and I also work behind the scenes as well. And the reason why I'm an ambassador for the British Dyslexia Association is because I have dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, as well as a rare neurological condition called PKC, which has all made me very passionate about raising awareness and true understanding for neurodiversity. I feel like there's a real lack of understanding, so that's why I've shifted in this part of my career. Here's some people I've worked with. These are some of my favourites. I've done over 100. Yeah, it's got to be in the hundreds now, the amount of people I've interviewed. I could talk the back legs of a donkey, working with Lorraine Kelly, working at festivals across the country, interviewing Jess Glynn, and most recently interviewing Ricky Hatton for a mental health podcast that I host. So I've worked with some amazing people within the media industry. So this is where my story began. So my educational journey, this was me about age 4. So I always talk a lot about your inner child, and it's important to reflect back and see where you've come from and how far you've come. But I always struggled throughout my time in education. I was always behind in my academic milestones, and I was always placed in lower sets. I had quite traumatic experience in my life. When I was 6, I sadly lost my dad suddenly. So I had that personal tragedy going on, which of course can impact your learning. But if you add any neurodiversity or disability involved, that can really add to the trauma and add to your development. But so at this point I was undiagnosed. I had a really bad experience with teachers in primary school, so I was labelled as lazy, stupid. I was told I wouldn't amount to anything, and bear in mind they knew what was going on at home. I still was receiving that treatment, so it was really a really traumatic time. And then consequently, because how the teachers were being, it allowed the students, so my peers, I unfortunately experienced bullying as well. So it's a really tough time. So this is my educational timeline in a bit more detail. So age 10, I was diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia. I had those stereotypical signs of dyslexia, so really struggling with spellings, handwriting, which can tie into dyspraxia as well. So I have typical doctor's handwriting. I still write like a doctor, only I can understand my handwriting. I really struggled with concentration, and I still do. I struggled with understanding and processing, that sort of thing. So I was formally diagnosed, but it's important for me to mention here, I was diagnosed privately, because in state education, it's very rare that they will go through the diagnosis. You have to really fight for it. So luckily, I had a very supportive mum who had to go private for me. So I was very privileged to have that. But still, a lot of families out there can't afford to do that. And like I say, I'm from a working class family in Liverpool, so we're not from money. So I'm very grateful to receive that. So then age 16, my time in high school had its challenges, but I definitely began masking a lot then, hiding a lot of my difficulties to fit in with my peers. I was able to hide, I was able to learn coping mechanisms and be able to hide what I was struggling with. At that age, you want to be seen as in crowd, you want to be seen as a blending, you don't want to be seen as struggling. But when I came home, that was on I felt quite burnt out. That mask would drop and I'd be really stressed, be highly anxious. And this was all because I was hiding my neurodiversity symptoms. But I always struggled with maths, even though I could do well in English with my coping mechanisms and some support. I always struggled with maths. And even though I had a private tutor and I had that support, and I still always struggled. So I always felt there was more to it from there. So unfortunately from that, I failed my GCSE maths. I did well in my GCSEs. I had to work really hard, but I did well in my GCSEs. But I failed my maths. So then I had to fight for a dyscalculia diagnosis. And dyscalculia, I'll go into the different conditions, but dyscalculia is basically the maths equivalent to dyslexia. So processing numbers, your ability to comprehend, that sort of thing, it comes with numbers. And it was also the age 17 to 19 is the age that you learn to drive. And that was one of my biggest challenges in my life, being dyspraxic. And a lot of people actually realise they're dyspraxic when they learn to drive, because it's not only concentration, I always describe dyslexia as tap your head, rub your belly. So it's doing all those different things at once. So steering wheel, gear stick, checking your mirrors. It took me about 2 years to learn to drive. And even though now I'm a safe driver, I've been driving over 10 years, I did really struggle. And that all comes with a hidden side of a disability with dyspraxia. Then age 19 to 22, unfortunately, I had more horrendous experiences at college, really bad experiences with teachers there. I was just had enough of education. I just thought, right, it's not for me. I'm not built for education. I can't do this. My self-esteem was rock bottom. But I had a really supportive family, and I had a supportive media lecturer who encouraged me, and she said, right, you can do this. And I was adamant, said, no, I'm going to just work. I'm not going to go to university. Like, it's not for me. And I discovered the broadcasting course at Chester University, and I was convinced I was going to be there for 3 weeks, and right, it's not for me. I'm not bothering staying here. And I absolutely loved it. I flourished in my degree. I excelled. I came out top of my class and graduated with honours. And since then, I've gone from strength to strength, and that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have that belief in me. If I didn't have that support network, I wouldn't be on the path that I am. So present day, age 26, I'm still working in the media industry, but I've still faced many challenges. I won't name names, but I have faced a lot of discrimination in different careers, in different roles that I've had, that lack of understanding. I've seen how other neurodiverse colleagues have been treated, and that all comes from that lack of understanding and lack of awareness. And that's why it makes me really passionate to do that. So doing the work with social media, British Dyslexia, and doing guest talks like I'm doing now, it makes me really, that trauma I faced has given me that feel in my belly to educate people about this. So what does neurodiversity actually mean? Because it's a fairly new term to describe your hidden disabilities that affect us with neurodiversity, so like dyslexia, dyspraxia. So a definition, according to Harvard University, neurodiversity describes the idea that people experience and interact with the world around them in many different ways. There's no right way of thinking, learning and behaving, and differences are not viewed as defects. That's really important. That's highlighted there, because when it's that negative terminology, thinking, oh, we can't do it the neurotypical way, it's wrong, but actually it should be embraced that we're thinking differently rather than seeing it as a defect. So I've just said neurotypical there, so neurodiverse versus neurotypical. So again, these are fairly new terms, but this is basically explaining what they are. So when we hear the term neurotypical, that simply describes an individual who is typically who has typical neurological thinking. Individuals who haven't got specific learning difficulties like dyslexia, autism, dyspraxia, ADHD, etc. So basically someone who hasn't got a condition is described as neurotypical, but if you have a condition like dyslexia, for example, you are neurodiverse or neurodivergent. And this is something I express in every single talk, webinar, podcast I do. It is more than just learning. Being neurodivergent doesn't just affect the way we learn. It refers to the diversity and the way that neurodiverse brains function socially, attention, mood and mental health and emotional dysregulation. It is so much more than the classroom. And a lot of people think, oh, when I leave education, I can just carry on with my life, I can move on, but actually it affects you in more than just that. So different types of neurodiversity, we might recognise some of these conditions, we might not hear nothing about them, but it's breaking down what they are. If you've heard of them, this is a breakdown of what it is. So dyslexia is probably one of the most common learning disabilities, and also probably one of the most famous ones. We all should have heard of dyslexia, but not fully understand what it is. So the definition of dyslexia is a learning difficulty that primarily affects the skills involved in accurate and fluid word reading and spelling. Characteristic features of dyslexia are difficulties in phonological awareness, verbal memory and verbal processing speed. So how we take in words, how we see words, how even coming to writing. A lot of people dyslexic can mirror write, so it looks like they're writing back to front, but that's how they're visualizing the words. Dyspraxia. So dyspraxia, also known as developmental coordination disorder or DCD, is a common movement disorder that affects movement and coordination. It affects your coordination skills such as task requiring balance, playing sport. A lot of people with dyspraxia who have it quite severely can be quite clumsy. They might struggle with sports, so catching a ball, moving quickly enough. It can also affect your ability to learn to drive a car. So as I was just touching on then, that was my biggest challenge with my dyspraxia, was learning to drive and having to explain that to driving instructors, having to explain that to the DVLA when I was having my driving test. So when you're nervous to do a test and you're having to explain to them what I struggle with and they've never heard of it, it's like, oh, it adds to that anxiety even more when you're about to sit your test. And it can also affect your fine motor skills. So touching on again, my handwriting being very clumsy and very chaotic, and that is all down to dyspraxia and how we organise. So it can affect you verbally and how you process as well. So there's a lot of misconceptions around dyspraxia. So dyscalculia is significantly under research compared to dyslexia, but it still affects a lot of people. Dyscalculia is a specific and persistent difficulty in understanding numbers, which can lead to a diverse range of difficulties with mathematics. Dyscalculia is under research compared to other learning disabilities. However, it's estimated that dyscalculia is likely to occur in 3 to 6% of the population. And the irony here, I'm really bad at maths, but that works out to be about 1 in 10 people. So it's pretty, I would say that's pretty common, and there's still a lack of understanding around dyscalculia. So here's some more different types of neurodiversity. We all should have heard of autism, so autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. And again, really important to say differences, not defects. It's just a different way of thinking. People with ASD often have problems with social communication and interaction and restricted or repetitive behaviours or interests. So a lot of autistic people, when they're heightened, they might have repetitive behaviours, so stimming. This can calm them down. Specific interests, so collecting facts and figures about something really particular, that's a sign of ASD, which is fantastic for working in an organisation. You know, if they're really passionate about figures or marketing, they put their heart and soul into that, so it is a real asset to have this. People with ASD may also have different ways of learning movement or paying attention. So how they present themselves, they find it really hard to regulate. So dysregulation is a really common term in autism. So that balance there. So yeah, a lot of misconceptions that come with autism as well. And it's really important to bear in mind it's a spectrum disorder. So a lot of people with ASD can be functioning on the spectrum, and then you have the other end of the spectrum where they might need assisted living, more one-to-one support throughout their life. So it is a spectrum disorder. ADHD is another developmental disability. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a condition that affects an individual's ability to concentrate, have an inner restlessness and hyperactivity. ADHD symptoms can also be emotional dysregulation, so touched on there, because ADHD and autism go hand in hand, being developmental disabilities. It can be really difficult with emotional dysregulation. It's harder for individuals to control their mood, and it's fantastic now there's so much awareness for ADHD amongst women. So women in the past are getting, now are getting diagnosed so much later in life because they've always been labelled as being highly anxious, suffering with depression, mood swings, but actually it could be ADHD, and it's really great that that's being explored and it's not just hyperactivity, especially amongst men and boys, that misconception of ADHD. So that's great that taboo is being broken and more women are exploring to see if they're neurodiverse. And a lot of people don't realise that Tourette syndrome is in fact a neurodiverse condition. It is a condition of the nervous system. So Tourette syndrome causes people to have tics. So famously, and one of my favourite people in the world, Liz Capaldi, has Tourette's, and he's been very open about his recent diagnosis and his journey. And it still has that misconception that Tourette's is swearing and saying phrases, but actually it can be really subtle tics, so constant blinking, moving your arm. It's that bad stereotype that it's that, but actually they cannot stop their body from doing something. And again, masking when it comes to Tourette. So if your Tourette is blinking over and over and over again, you can't stop that. So you're trying your hardest to stop doing that, and then when you come home in your safe space, that mask drops and it makes your symptoms worse, and it exacerbates your tics. So this is a question that I want you all to think about. You don't have to say anything. It's just something that I'd like you to take with you today. So true acceptance and understanding. Do we really accept neurodiversity in our workplaces? It's something that we like to think we're very accessible. We're 2023 going into 2024. Are we an acceptable place for disabilities? But do we really accept neurodiversity in our workplaces? And this is how neurodiverse employees have felt in the UK. This is all recent findings, and this is all stuff that is relevant. So when following on from this question, this is what people have said. So right at the beginning of the hiring process, so according to Bagnock and Clark's employment survey, 19% of employees felt that revealing their neurodivergence to a potential employer would definitely affect their career opportunities, while 42% felt they might. So really high figures there, that people felt like they were reluctant to share their neurodiverse conditions. They didn't want this to go against them in the job hiring process, even though it's now by law with the Equality Act, you've got to make it as an accessible, have reasonable adjustments for neurodiverse employees and diversity. We like to think with that, but from these recent findings, this is how neurodiverse employees have felt. Workplace culture. So research carried out by O2 found that 81% of neurodivergent individuals felt there was an opportunity for them to work to be better and to be supported at work. So really, really high. So that's, well over 3/4 of people felt that there was an opportunity for them to be better supported. What's more worrying is that the same study found that 64% of employers still admit having little or no understanding of cognitive differences that people may have. So positively, you guys are all here today and you want to learn more. So we, like I say, we hear terms like dyslexia, we hear ADHD, we hear autism, but do we really understand how this impacts people, and not just in the classroom? And leadership, according to the Adecco Group survey, 75% of senior managers and directors have heard of the term neurodiversity. This is through either their company or the media. So positively, people are hearing these terms, so we should have heard of autism, we should have heard of dyslexia. However, while awareness is prevalent in the senior positions, it is necessary to clearly communicate the best way to help neurodivergent workers. So we still have a really long way to go with this. So really important to cover as well different types of discrimination. We'd like to think that no one's being intentionally discriminated, but sadly it does happen, and in recent years it does happen. Unfortunately, you know, I've overcome it, but I've faced discrimination, and it's something I'm really passionate to educate people about. So direct discrimination, we all should have heard of this. So the Equality Act 2010, so as I touched on earlier, the Equality Act protects all people, whether you're LGBTQ+, what your ethnicity is, what your cultural background is, if your disability, hidden and physical. The Equality Act is there to protect you. So this is from unfair treatment at work, but this still doesn't stop direct discrimination. An example of direct discrimination is when an employer treats a disabled employee less favourably than other employees. So making it visibly clear that, you know, favourable treatment, it's like saying, oh, they can do, you know, they don't ask them to do that. You can't do that because of your disability, you know, very clear. Even things when it comes to banter, so jokes in the office, that can be a form of direct discrimination as well. So yeah, poor taste jokes don't go down very well. Indirect discrimination, so again, a lot of people don't realise this. So disability discrimination can be also indirect, where discrimination can be more subtle, and neurodivergent employees might not recognise they're being discriminated against. So nobody knows someone's story, but when you look at neurodiverse people, all of them have had some sort of bad experience in education. So when you're taking that into the workplace, they're thinking, oh, it's just me, I don't need to add this. If they have autism, they might struggle to read the situation, so they may not even realise that they're being discriminated against or have the confidence to actually question people's decision. An example of indirect discrimination would be a manager not considering a neurodiverse employee for a promotion as they don't believe they would be capable. So again, it's really subtle, but that is in fact a form of discrimination. And it's really important. So I'm a mental health practitioner, so I'm a mental health first aider, and I'm a suicide first aider. And what I want to talk to you guys now about is the impact a lack of understanding can have on neurodiverse individuals. So a lack of understanding for individuals' needs can have a detrimental impact on well-being, affecting their mental health, confidence and self-esteem. And that's why it's so important that we do what we can to understand neurodiversity and prevent discrimination in our workplaces for neurodiverse employees. So again, talk about confidence, how this can impact someone, you know, being just not only just discriminated about, but made to feel different, made to feel ostracized in work. You know, that neurodiverse people have already that lack of self-esteem and self-belief, so that is just adding to that. And you'd like to say, you don't know what anyone's going through, and sadly, especially amongst ADHD, 1 in 4 women will take their own lives, and attempt to take their own lives because of feeling different, of feeling judged. You know, it does happen, and that's why we've got to be so careful. So again, I'm just going to break down to you again the implications of poorly managed symptoms. So again, a loss of it's my dyslexia, a loss of productivity. So when neurodivergent individuals aren't supported in the workplace, even after disclosing to management and HR, this can lead to a loss of productivity. For example, if an employee doesn't provide the correct equipment or reasonable adjustments, this can increase stress levels and create a lack of trust between employee and employer. So, for example, if you've disclosed in confidence to your manager about I need Dragon software, for example, if they're not acting on that, saying yes, we'll sort it out, and time goes by and that's not being acted on, you're not gonna, that breaks that safe space and trust, because you're gonna think, well, they've not took me seriously, they're not acting on that, why should I express my issues in confidence to them again? So that is an example of loss of productivity. And as well, they're going to really struggle getting their work done to the best of their ability. Again, coasting by, masking. It's not reaching their full potential. Absence. So absence, it does happen. Absence can result from a neurodiverse individual's anxiety surrounding facing the working environment, where they feel as though they aren't fully supported. So it might lead to long-term absence, even loss of job altogether if not addressed or fully supported. So again, stress levels, it can lead to them being signed off with stress, not wanting to return to work, leaving their position because they aren't fully supported. And it's really sad because, you know, we like to think somebody's gone for a job because they're passionate about it, they're interested, they're good at it, they've got through the interview. But if they feel like they aren't fully supported, they're not going to come to work. And also, it's sad on your side and loss on you, because you're losing a great member of the team that isn't being fully supported. And burnout, this is something I talk about a lot in my podcast. So perhaps the biggest and most serious implication of not managing neurodiverse symptoms, burnout can occur from neurodivergent employees masking their traits and behaviours to blend in and perform their job roles in a neurotypical way. So touching on before, they don't want to be seen as different, they don't want to be seen as being a hindrance or a burden. So if they can coast by with their conditions, they will, and they don't want to be seen as different, so they'll mask the traits, especially amongst women. We're hearing that term a lot, masking, but they'll blend in and perform their job roles in a neurotypical way, and that this avoids them feeling like a burnout or a problem to management. If they're constantly feeling like they have to go to management saying, I'm struggling with this, the software is not right for me, I'm struggling to work in this environment, they're going to feel like a problem. And, you know, officers can be quite cliquey, you know, it's feeling like, oh, they're talking about me, or I feel like, why are they getting all that treatment? And it can really heighten anxiety and lead to long-term sickness and stress. So then it's that knock-on effect on your business, because you're losing a member of the team that is also more than capable with the right support. So correct language. How can I talk to a colleague about their neurodiversity? This is a question I'm asked all the time, you know, and I like to think people want to help, people want to make sure they're not offending anyone, but how can we support a colleague by using the right language, and how can I talk to colleagues as well? So it's so simple, but it's so important. People forget to do this. Also, always talk to the individually, privately, and listen to them. Actively listen, and I'm going to talk about this in my next few slides. So how can I start the conversation about being neurodiverse with my co-worker? Really simple again. I'm neurodivergent, I'm neurodiverse, I'm dyslexic, I have dyslexia, and again, apply that to all your other conditions if you want to. I have ADHD, I have autism, I have autism spectrum disorder, I have dyspraxia, I have dyslexia, I have Tourette syndrome. Really simple. I have hidden disability, I have a hidden disability, I have hidden disabilities, I have a disability. A lot of people don't realise, again, that neurodiversity and neurodiverse conditions are actually, they come under the DSM-5, so it is in fact a hidden disability, so you can say this. And then for managers and co-workers, how should I respond? Again, really, really simple. Thank you for sharing that with me. We absolutely can help you. What can I do to support you? Have you spoken to management or HR about this? Signpost to wider support. Again, with the last one, we're not expecting people to know the answers. You're not HR, you're not specialists in this field, but again, actively listen, take in what they're saying, and it's okay not to know the answers. Make notes, listen to the person and say, have you spoken to HR about this? HR will have a wide range of resources that can help managers support the neurodiverse individual and colleague. So again, how can I continue to support neurodivergent staff? So you've just made that really key conversation. You've made that safe space. You've created that element of trust, being able to address the conversation. I'll go back later on those slides. And again, it's really simple and effective. But how can you continue to support neurodivergent staff? Here's how. So greater awareness. Implementing awareness training programs, management plans and comprehensive workplace assessments for all staff. For example, set up a meeting for mentoring programs that provides neurodivergent employees with a safe space to express how they feel and seek advice if they're struggling. So again, make it a really confidential space. It can be a survey via email, it can be a group that you meet once a month or every few months. And it's a chance to give back to the company and say how you're finding it, good and bad feedback. And also provide greater awareness to people who are neurotypical in the workplace, educate them about neurodiversity, those training programs, so what we're doing today, management plans, management having greater awareness of neurodiverse conditions, and again, how each condition can affect an individual completely differently. You can have 3 people all with ADHD and it affects them all completely differently. It's learning what works for each person, but also how their condition affects them. Information sessions. Having workplace information sessions and networks can also be useful, not just for neurodiverse employees, but also neurotypical employees. So again, with greater awareness, this gives them the opportunity to learn how to truly understand and support their colleagues. So you can't be what you can't see. So me as a neurodiverse woman, doing this presentation to you, I'm giving my lived experience, my story, my knowledge. It's very difficult to listen to someone who hasn't experienced that. So if they're willing to, having those information sessions is invaluable, and it gives not only that trust that you can share that and that you're willing to learn. Reasonable adjustments, so this is crucial, and again, although reasonable adjustments are a requirement of the Equality Act, listening, again, active listening, that's a really key word I want you guys to take from this. To a neurodivergent employee's unique and original needs in a timely fashion can really help them reach their full potential in the workplace. And when I say timely fashion, some things are out of control. So software can take a long time to get uploaded on the computer, can take a long time to set up. But check in with the neurodiverse your colleague, say, so after a week after the one-to-one, follow up and say, I just want to let you know I've chased this up, I'm still waiting to hear back. So even if there's a delay that you can't control, you're doing that active communication, you're talking to them, you're making it clear to them, this is important to us, you're important to the team, we want this to be set up for you. Keep checking in. If you're trialing something out with them, do a follow-up in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, and say, how is this going for you? Is there we can try differently? Is this not working? So keep checking in. And again, it's not a one size fits all. What might work for one person might not work for the other. So it's all about trial and testing that out. And yes, it can be timely, you're taking time out every few weeks, but it's invaluable. It's so important. And it's that reverse psychology. If you make work so happy for someone, they're never going to want to leave, and you're going to retain an amazing amount of individuals in the workplace who can give with and share their gifts of being neurodiverse. So here's some more examples. Software and support. First, ask the individual, are there any software or support that you may have tried previously? They might have coping mechanisms that use like colour overlays, headphones, or software like Dragon. So I touched on Dragon before. Dragon is just amazing. It's a headset where you can talk to the computer. So me being a chat box, I can speak rather than type because of my typing speed, and so it's a fantastic piece. And also it reads back as well, so the quality of emails and work being sent out is dramatically different because they're using the right software. Colour overlays as well, so that can really support someone. Headphones, so a busy bustling office, I in the past I've put headphones in because it helps block out noise for me, so it's really important to trial and test software. Additional time, so students with a formal diagnosis in exams, for example, so in schools, would be entitled to additional time for exams and deadlines. This should be extended to projects with staff. So speak to neurodiverse staff and see what would help them, and also check in frequently. I completely understand with clients, with businesses, you have set deadlines. Absolutely. We're not saying you miss deadlines. We're not saying that at all. What we're saying is let the neurodiverse colleague, let them know in advance before you let the other members of the team know. Checking in with them, make it clear, use visual cues. So make it clear this deadline has to be done. Do check-ins, again, concentration, organisation. These are all things that neurodiverse colleagues struggle with, so keep that clear and keep that focus there. So again, additional time. So again, you're not missing your deadline, but just by letting them know in advance before you let the other teams know, it can be really, really effective, and you get the work done and an amazing quality. So breaks, again, a really fair, reasonable adjustment. Offering short, reasonable breaks from desk and working environments can be really effective. This can be helped with hyperfixation, which comes with neurodiverse conditions prevent burnout. So positively, one of the things that come with being neurodiverse is hyperfocus. So having that interest, that putting all your energy in. So it's an incredible gift to have. However, there also is a downside to that, becoming so fixated on something, you can't take a break from your desk and you find it really difficult to step away. Absolutely, I'm guilty of it. But I have to have, being self-employed, I have to have those boundaries with myself, take a break from my desk, to come away. Don't, you know, those breaks are important. So if you're managing someone who's like this, you need to make sure they're having breaks, making sure they're leaving when they're, you know, when their day's ended, making sure they switch off from work, coming the next day. And this prevents emphasising other neurodiverse conditions, so lack of organisation, lack of concentration, and it also prevents burnout as well. So it's really important that we manage that and encourage breaks. So how to support in the recruitment process? So a lot of people ask me this because it's, as I say, there are so many gifts that come with hiring someone who's neurodiverse, to having a member of your team, but how do we get neurodivergent people interested in the company? How do we get them hired? So this is my advice. So application right at the very beginning of the hiring process, and make it clear that you're a disability friendly employer, acting and encouraging neurodivergent candidates to apply. Offer a contact email to HR or the hiring manager for applicants to ask for reasonable adjustments for the application. So when reasonable adjustments might include having additional time in a task, it might include making sure that so if there's a form to fill in, it's the right colour overlay, it's worded very clearly. These are all really easy to do to help someone in the application process. The interview, so they've passed the application, make it clear and make it the interview as calm and as clear as possible. Keep questions direct without any ambiguity and allow extra time for answers. So again, someone who's neurodiverse might miss social cues, they might struggle to read the room. So by making questions really clear and concise, and allow them to have extra time and making it feel like a safe space again, it's going to make them feel real relaxed and create that vision of trust. Trying to make the interview as practical as possible as well, so applicants can demonstrate their strengths. Also think about the environment for the interview. So if it's in a loud, bustling environment, music's playing, it can be really difficult to concentrate. If you're around typing, if you're in, even lighting can be a real challenge. So if it's really bright lighting, that can be quite harsh on someone who's neurodiverse. So please do bear that in mind. And again, that all ties into the beginning of the application. Ask if there's any reasonable adjustments beforehand, so anything you can prepare in the interview, because it's no different to if you interview someone who's a wheelchair user, making sure that they had access requirements. So it's no different there for someone who has a hidden disability. And onboarding, so fantastic, you've hired a neurodivergent individual to your organisation. The support doesn't stop there. After a successful interview, it's important to make sure all existing staff have had neurodiversity training before. This can be attending a webinar like I'm doing now, before a new neurodivergent team member joins the team. This also helps generalised training as well. It doesn't make you feel like, oh right, Joe Bloggs is joining the team, we need to all have neurodiverse training. We will all know or meet someone in our lives who's neurodiverse, so take away the new colleague. it's going to help you in your professional and personal lives, and it also helps reduce anxiety of the neurodiverse new starter by creating clear guides for their tasks in clear bullet pointed formats. So for example, highlighting exactly where they need to go, what their requirements are, making clear their passwords for login, that sort of thing. It sounds really basic, but it's really, really helpful. And making sure they've got multiple copies because they could lose this, so have it to hand as well, and it all helps. And this is another one as well I wanted to touch on. So as a mental health first aider, the impacts of life transitions. So big life events like becoming a parent, moving house, even receiving a promotion, these are all wonderful things to celebrate. However, for a neurodivergent person, this can increase anxiety levels with the adjustment to new routine, which can make the condition symptoms more heightened, for example, forgetting to task, a lack of organisation, or even having emotional outbursts and meltdowns. Of course, we've all got stuff going on at home. They've obviously been promoted for a reason, for example. It's not taking away they're not capable of that. However, it's a big change and life adjustment, and it's that emotional dysregulation that comes with that, that the people that they may struggle with, having outbursts, meltdowns. So be patient and be kind. Really basic stuff, but it's huge for someone who's neurodiverse. So it's massive for somebody who's neurotypical. So imagine how someone who's neurodivergent is coping with that, and just offer a helping hand. They might not accept that, they might have their own coping mechanisms, but just be kind. And it's really basic, but just be mindful of that as well. So here are some of the benefits. I touched on this presentation, so we're very neurodivergent positive here. But the benefits of having a neurodiverse team, the creativity that comes with being neurodiverse. There are so many amazing gifts, but creativity is just one of them. What they can bring to your company is amazing. Their ideas, how they visualize things, it's incredible. So it's something that should be embraced. Unique ways of thinking, so problem solving, even ways of how people operate who are neurodiverse. It's fantastic. So look at Richard Branson, how he runs Virgin. He has dyslexia, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia, and he's proud of it, and he embraces a diverse team because of their unique ways of thinking. And attention to detail. So this again, hyperfocus, hyperfixation, it's something that should be celebrated. So they could hand something in that is flawless. They may take their time doing it. It may take them, they may struggle to take a break from it, and all the organisation around that they may struggle with, but their attention to detail is second to none, and that should be embraced and something that should be celebrated. And that's why you should be actively encouraging neurodiverse colleagues to talk about the conditions, privately, but also hiring neurodivergent people to your team. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. I know that was a lot to listen to. Thank you so much for listening and taking that in, and thank you very much. And I'm now here to take questions as well.
Thanks so much, Lauren. We're just going to give Anne an opportunity to run through the content available from Marshall's, and then we'll dive into the question and answer. We've had some questions come in already, so if you do have questions for Lauren or for Anne, please send them in using the questions function that's on your screen now. Anne, are you able to, there you are, join us?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me okay? I think I've come back on.
Yeah, all good,
yeah.
thanks.
Brilliant. So I just wanted to, firstly, thank you, Lauren. That was absolutely amazing. I've heard Lauren speak before, and it's always really, really super engaging and extremely informative, very interesting. In particular, I want to just say thank you, for sharing your personal story too. You talk about, you ask people the question about, what is their level of understanding and what is their level of acceptance really around neurodiversity. And I think understanding and hearing a personal story absolutely brings that to life and really makes us think about, our awareness and understanding. So great, thank you so much. But before we move to Q&A, and I'll do this as quickly as possible, just wanted to take a moment to describe how Marshall's can support Ciphr clients or anybody here on the call and your organisations with training and consultancy on workplace neurodiversity. So I'm going to touch on our e-learning, and I'm going to touch on our facilitated training and consultancy support. So firstly, in terms of our e-learning, so Marshall's has a signature e-learning course on neurodiversity, and this comprises 2 parts. Perhaps we could have the next slide.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so this is just a screen from our signature module. So it's in 2 parts. Firstly, it describes what neurodiversity is and the different conditions and symptoms, which in a similar way to Lauren has introduced those for us today. And then it also has a second part which provides guidance and practical advice around supporting neurodivergent employees in the workplace. So it's a helpful module for both colleagues, all employees, and for line managers and leaders. So you can see this screen here, just to give you an idea of some of the content. This page contains some hotspots that address different ways of making the workplace neuro-inclusive and neuro-friendly. So then, secondly, we also have a short bite-sized course, which is maximum sort of 10 to 15 minute duration. It's an introduction to neurodiversity with a focus on the workplace. And you can see here it's presenter led, and Lauren is the presenter. So we weren't able to see Lauren this morning, but this is Lauren. The presenter content is interspersed with additional information and learner activities. So we found that this format works really well in busy workplaces, and it really engages staff with different topics. So this neurodiversity module, this micro learning course, is one of a suite consisting of 7 other EDI topic-based courses. So that's well worth a look if you'd like. Just get in touch and we can share that with you and give you a preview. And of course, just on the e-learning, we're always really delighted to get queries from you, inquiries about creating a fully bespoke module if you want to start from scratch around neurodiversity, make it really tailored to your needs and your organisation. And then finally, in terms of facilitated sessions and wider consultancy support on neurodiversity, we're really, really delighted. Lauren works with us as an associate at Marshall, so she can tailor in-person or virtual sessions to different learner groups with different content, or she can provide guidance if, for example, you're wanting to write a policy around neurodiversity, or if you've got a particular challenge that you want some very specific advice and consultancy around, which is associated with neurodiversity. So I'm going to leave it there because I know we're short of time and I know there are questions, but please do get in touch with us if you would like to find out more about anything that I've talked about. And yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anne. I'm just going to skip back 2 slides because we didn't verbally highlight that if you want a free trial of our neurodiversity at work course, we're happy to offer that to you. Just type free into the question box and we will arrange for that for you after the broadcast. One of us will be in touch to set that up for you. So I'm just going to offer a quick recap while you think about if you want to opt in for that. Lauren shared a wealth of information with us, looking at the differences between who we consider neurodiverse and neurotypical, including discussing different types of neurodiversity, such as dyslexia, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia. She also explained how a lack of support at work can lead to lost productivity, absence, and burnout, and shared more about how to have conversations around neurodiversity, what language to use, how to open up those conversations, as well as sharing ideas for supporting neurodiverse workers. And just giving you a quick run through of the support available from Marshall's, and we can offer you that free course trial if you'd like. So it's time for question and answer, and we've had loads of questions come in so far. Thank you very much. There's one which has really dominated, probably about 10 people have sent in the same question for you, which I might open up to Lauren first. So the same theme is, how would you approach an employee who you suspect of being neurodiverse or showing signs that they may have a neurodiverse condition, but that hasn't been disclosed or you suspect has not been diagnosed?
So thank you so much for your question. Absolutely, it could be a really quite daunting as a colleague or a manager having that conversation, but it's great that you want to help. Going back to my slides on language and the right way to approach situations, so always don't make it out that they're in trouble. So it might be a case of emailing them, so that can be, again, if they don't know, realize it themselves, email them to say, or drop them a Teams message and just keep it really informal, say, hi, are you free for a quick conversation? Don't worry, you're not, and again, just if you want to as well, if you feel a need to be clear, to say, don't worry, you're not in trouble, I just want to catch you up on something. Take them to a confidential space, and this is really important. Don't feel like there's a time limit as well. If you want to as well, some people might feel like this, if they want to speak to HR beforehand, or even have HR present, if they have an understanding of neurodiversity, and again, it's express them beforehand, they're not in trouble, but just having HR there, it's a safe space, but also it eliminates that thing, actually saying, yeah, we can support you with that, and if you need a bit more guidance, but as well, if you feel like you can just do it by yourself, that again, it builds that trust with management. So start the conversation by saying, I've noticed you're having challenges with, for example, organisation. I notice you're having challenges with spelling an email. Have you ever been, again, start, don't be afraid to say as well, have you ever been suspected you might have a neurodiverse condition like dyslexia or anything like that? And it just starts that conversation off, and talk about, I've just noticed these signs, and are there any ways that we can help you? Are there any software we can implement? Is there anything we can do, anything I can do differently? Am I managing you right? Is there, talk about management style and create that safe space. Give that time to listen and actively listen as well. So make notes of what they're saying, what they're struggling with. And again, say, if it's just yourself in the room, just say, would you mind if I speak to HR about this, just so I can talk about what support I can implement to you, and consult from there. So again, it's just creating that trust as well, but it's really important afterwards you do the follow-up as well. So say for example, if they're exploring having a diagnosis, do a follow-up and just say, can we support you with anything like that? Is there anything we can do to help? It's creating that trust. And again, we're not expecting you to be miracle workers, we're not expecting you to know the answers, but the fact you're willing to help and willing to listen is everything. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Lauren. Is there anything to add there, Anne? I saw a lot of nodding.
Yeah, I just think great answer, Lauren, thank you. I would just echo that. I think it's about creating trust, isn't it, and showing that maybe you're coming to the conversation as a manager around the issue that's presenting. Maybe somebody is struggling with a particular aspect of their role, and it's about you as a manager working with that employee around how you can help and what practical support you can put in place for them. And then as part of that conversation, it's having that trust that you are concerned about them and you want to support them in their role, that the conversation about a diagnosis or a potential diagnosis might, it's likely to come a little bit more naturally. And I just wanted to share a very quick story. My husband was actually in that situation in his 50s, and he was in a role where he had to do a lot of having to do a lot of drafting, a lot of writing, and spelling has never been his great strong point, and he just wasn't seeing the mistakes, and he actually had this hugely supportive manager who helped him on a practical level with that, and then just said to him, have you ever thought that you might be dyslexic? And she encouraged him, and he went, and he was diagnosed, and he found that label, a label or that diagnosis to be really, really helpful, because it enabled him to understand. But what it did also was it showed him the things that he was really great at, as well as the things that he was really struggling with. He's got a very good strategic vision, not so much attention to detail, but which is what he always tells people, which is brilliant. But yeah, so just that was a really great positive story. So I do think yeah, don't be afraid, but it's about building trust, I think.
And related to that, Anne, we have one question where the organisation as a whole is struggling to encourage staff to feel open enough to disclose neurodiversity, so their disclosure rates are really low. Any advice for creating that kind of culture of greater awareness and trust?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because this is a longer term thing. You know, you can't, I think, in terms of disclosure around characteristics, identity in general, it's you're in there for a long haul, really. It's not something that you're going to change overnight. But I think like sessions like this one are so important, having the conversation, talking about the issues, raising awareness, understanding, getting people just more familiar about talking about the terminology, the language, giving people confidence that constructive and positive conversations are being had within your organisation will help people to feel confident to actually disclose through a sort of monitoring activity or monitoring exercise. I think, you know, you can also, you know, some typical ways around, perhaps not specifically around neurodiversity, but just about around disclosure is, you know, think who is communicating the request there to disclose. And you might say, okay, the chief exec or somebody, you know, the most senior person, but actually there are a lot of important influencers in your organisation, and they may not be the most senior people necessarily. So think who is listened to by the colleagues, by the employees in your organisation, and how can they be putting those messages out around why disclosure is important and what is going to happen with the information and why we want everybody to contribute. You know, I think that's important, and it is some of those making sure you answer those basic questions. You know, why are we asking you the question? What are we going to do with the information? How will it be held confidentially? Who has access to it? And also demonstrating that once you've got that data, that you're using it in a really positive way for the benefit of everyone. So yeah, it's things that culture doesn't shift overnight. You know, you've got to work at it.
Definitely. Lauren, like I'm sorry, I must move on to another question because we have lots and we're running out of time really rapidly. Lauren, one question here is someone's asking, could you share like some of the programs that you might use on your laptop that are really beneficial for people with dyslexia, if you use any of those?
Absolutely. So my favourite one is Dragon software. Dragon, as I touched on in the presentation, is amazing. Even colleagues I've worked with who are neurotypical have said this is absolutely incredible. So Dragon software, it comes with a headset, so you talk to the computer. It's installed in, so instead of typing, you're verbally talking. It does all your spelling and also does read back as well and talk back. So with me, my processing, even if I'm writing something, in my head it's like it sounds right. When I read it, when I eventually read it back, it's normally because it's handed in. But when I read it back, I'm like, oh God, that doesn't make sense. But Dragon does that for me. It reads back. Microsoft is amazing. That now has talk back and read back. So I believe it's from the 2021 version. But again, most organisations have Microsoft that's accessible. Dragon is amazing for that. Even, you know, offering just headsets is a fantastic option as well. But I just wanted to add on from what Anne said there about talking to your team about neurodiversity, about disclosure, by doing webinars, by doing training, by doing days highlighting neurodiversity. It gets people not only thinking about it, but also it plucks them up the courage to go and speak to management about what they might be struggling with. And also, it's not necessarily a software, but colour overlays can be really helpful. So if you know of a dyslexic or any neurodiversity, but mainly dyslexic, because I know this affects them. If they have a lot of like printed work, offer printed copies, but trial the colours of them. Try, does yellow work? Does pink work? Does green work? You know, different colours work for different people, different neurodiversities. So again, that's not necessarily a technology, but that could be something to look at as well.
Thanks, Lauren. Just follow up with another question. I've got a couple of people ask about pursuing diagnoses and recommended routes for that. I know you're not a medical professional, so you maybe won't be able to speak to that, but you mentioned that you pursued a private diagnosis when you were younger for your conditions. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. So even though, like illustrating what you're saying there, Catherine, I'm not a medical practitioner, but I can provide advice on that. So you can go through the NHS route. So whether it's dyslexia, ADHD, autism, anything like that, it starts with going to your GP. Even if you're wanting to go private, it starts with the GP. So you go to GP and you express your concerns. They'll start by doing a questionnaire. So if you're piloting, so for example, autism, they'll ask you the latest questions on that. So it's normally like, how do I struggle reading the room 1 to 5 sort of thing, and you'll fill that form in, and then you'll then hopefully get a referral. Unfortunately, with NHS waiting times, as we know, it can take minimum it's a year's wait, and you know, there's something in government that's trying to change at the moment, but I understand the cost that comes with this. But one thing I want to say is if you cannot go private with the NHS, it's really important that you follow this up as well, with your GP. You know, absolutely there is that waiting time, but follow this up and use this keyword, this is impacting my quality of life. If you keep saying that, which it is, you know, this is impacting my mental health, this is impacting my work, this is impacting my personal life, this is impacting my quality of life. And you know, sometimes, because I say this because some practitioners might not take you seriously, think, oh, but you've got to really push and press on this. If you're going down the private route, please do your research, because I've spoke to some people who have been, I hate to say it, conned. So please do your research, research the independent practitioner who works at the organisation, you know, research them, what their qualifications are, what the actual what the diagnosis process is. Do your research. Diagnosis can be anything between £400 to £1,000. One thing I want to elaborate as well with that is, again, when it comes to doing your research, speak to the clinic beforehand, see where you're gonna do that. Any diagnosis, and this is again comes with being making sure it's legitimate, no diagnosis will be done in half an hour. So if you see, oh, quick ADHD diagnosis, quick diagnosis, this isn't reputable. So please read and do your thing, because you don't want it, because even when it comes to assessments, you want there to be an outcome of either a diagnosis or a referral to something else. It's not going to be, I suspect you have ADHD, for example. It has to be, you must ask these questions saying, this will result me in having a diagnosis. It will never be half an hour. Diagnosis can be ranged, at minimum it's about 2 hours. A lot of people now do them online, which again isn't a bad thing. However, I would recommend, if possible, it's done in person, because you can see people's demeanour, especially body language, getting them doing practical. You're best doing it in person. I would strongly advise against an over the phone assessment. You need, if you're going to have it done digitally, please make sure it's a video call, like a Teams or a Zoom, so you can see the clinician, they can see you. And I just want to go back to the NHS route as well. In England, in NHS England, we have a system called Right to Choose. So, for example, if you live in Birmingham and you really struggle to get the waiting time, so if you're waiting for over a year for diagnosis and it's taking far too long, you have the right to access Right to Choose. So if you're willing to travel, so they'll go, right, Liverpool has a clinic, Manchester has a clinic. If you're willing to travel to Liverpool or Manchester, for example, you can be seen a lot sooner. So it's called Right to Choose, and by law they've got to access that. So speak to GP receptionist about that.
Brilliant, thanks Lauren. I realise that we've gone over time, so thank you to everyone who's stayed with us so far. I just want to try and tackle a few more questions before we close the webinar. This is all being recorded, so if you do have another call to go to or a meeting, don't worry, we're recording this and you can catch up later. Question for Lauren: what learning activities engage most with the neurodiversity in your mind and really hit the mark for you?
Oh, sorry, can I just get the end of that question again, please?
Yeah, like what types of training activities really engage you with a neurodiverse brain and neuroatypical brain?
So first one that comes to mind straight away is being very practical. So whether it's health and safety training or what you know, relevant to what your team does, try and make the training as accessible as possible, so make it really practical. If you're hiring an external body to come in and do the training, make sure that it creates that safe space again, so the team can disclose to, or the manager can disclose, a colleague of mine has ADHD, for example, this is what might learn for them. You know, if they want to speak beforehand, if you're getting an external body involved, make it really practical, make it really visual. And again, provide breaks. Breaks are really important to anyone neurotypical, but especially for neurodivergent people. Offer breaks, offer space to walk around as well, being sat down for long periods of time, and be mindful of the environments that you're doing that training with. So if it's an allowed, I understand space-wise, if you're facilitating that, make sure space, it's not too loud, it gives accessibility for fresh air. So again, getting a walk, that sort of thing. And again, ask the individual about training beforehand. Said, even if it's a requirement, say we're required for you to undertake this training, but what access requirements do we need? So again, my top tips for that would be practical, be visual, and provide reasonable breaks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lauren. And do you have anything to add on that on the training front?
Yeah, I think what Lauren said is right, and just what went through my mind there when she was talking was, I think, you know, a lot of the, if you like, adjustments or considerations that we might think we're making for neurodivergent employees to be able to join training, you know, the chances are the adjustments that we're making are making it better for everybody. So it's that whole piece for communicating, and it isn't just about training, of course, it's about communicating everything, you know, that clarity, making sure that you give people plenty of notice, organisation, you know, what's going to happen during the day or the session or the training event or whatever, you know, how will it be delivered, virtually, in person, you know, what software do we need, how does that meet different people's needs, and you know, that great, if you're doing it in person, that great physical environment with things like breaks, etc., you know, and all these things benefit everyone. It's not just for neurodivergent employees. So chances are everybody will be really pleased if you think about those. Yeah, that's my only point. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anne and Lauren. I'm going to close the webinar there. I'm sorry if we haven't had a chance to get to your question. Apologies for that, but we do need to wrap up. So just remains to say thanks again to Lauren and to Anne for sharing all their advice. Lauren, it was really brilliant to work with you on this one and hear more about your story and learn from you. If you'd like to claim a free trial of Marshall's Neurodiversity at Work module, please type free into the questions box and we will arrange that for you afterwards. Excuse me. If you'd like to learn more about Ciphrs HR and software solutions, or about Marshall's course catalogue more widely, you can opt in to find out more information at the end of this broadcast. That exit survey also invites you to share any feedback you might have about today's webinar, just so we can improve for next time. So thank you again, and thank you, Lauren. Really great to have you with us today. Thank you everyone for being so attentive and sending in lots of questions. We hope you found this really useful. Thanks again, have a great day and take care.